Here I am, taking the Eurostar to visit my parents. I'm assigned 4-person table seats. That sucks for my leg room, but it also, and mainly, does not suck. For this time, I am blessed with the best train buddies ever. Claire and her 2 kids, traveling across Europe from Singapore. Claire's vibe is half total sweetness, half deathly stress. The day before, she did a dry run to the train station to make sure they would get there in time the day of. She asks me about how safe it is to leave her luggage in the luggage compartment. The mantle of the village elder suddenly falls on me, the local. Fret not, fair Claire, thy coffers rest in peace. For the rest of the ride, my shoulders ache with the responsibility of her purple Samsonites. At some point, fair Claire leaves for the buffet car to get a pain au chocolat for her little son. She comes back with a hot chocolate for me. I'm very touched. Her daughter hands me pop rock candy. When I tell her it's my first time trying this stuff, she looks at me with pity in her gaze, like a queen on her trusty steed, looking down at her toothless vassal. Claire and I vibe. Claire is a worried woman. At the center of her worries, at the center of her concerns is, of course, her precious offspring. Their health, their happiness, their chocolate supplies. Fair Claire is far away from the stereotypical Asian tiger mom. She complains about the Singaporean educational system, how it's too intense, too competitive, not leaving enough time for her kids to chill, to do nothing, to taste the sweet nectar of free Wednesday afternoons, of Sunday lie-ins. She revealed she has had other lives before pushing out these 2. An intrepid adventurer in her 30s, backpacking through Mongolia and Tibet, rescuing princesses from their ivory towers, killing sharks with her bare hands. Then she married a Singaporean businessman, got pregnant twice, and embraced the hardest job of them all, motherhood. A new vision board. The win condition is a happy, healthy life for these 2 youths with remarkably great skin. But the capitalist dystopia is global. But the job market is saturated. But actually, even having a job in general kind of sucks. But fair Claire hath conceived a most cunning plot. Australia. A realm known to me only by way of funky rock albums and tanned beauty gurus. Fair Claire divulges she wishes to send her kin to these distant shores. The school system there is not as intense, and there would be time left in the day for her kids to do other things besides studying. I think she hopes for them to pick up artistic, meaningful pastimes like clarinet or bird watching. I do not have the courage to tell her that as a most common Western teen, I spent my precious free afternoons eating ready meal lasagnas, sunk on the couch with my sister, our eyes glued to Nickelodeon. Fair Claire declares she struggles with some aspects of the Singaporean mentality. She tells me about something called Kiasu. Kiasu means, literally, being afraid to lose. It seems to describe a general vibe of 1. Working hard. 2. Looking over your shoulder to see how your neighbor's doing. 3. Feeling feelings of fear once you realize he might be doing better than you. 4. Working harder. Fair Claire wishes for her kids to look over the shoulder to watch the soft, fluttering flight of a tiny Tibetan bluebird, not the stressed-out face of Mrs. Tan, VP of Operations, demanding a status update on the quarterly audit at 9 p.m. on a Sunday. Fair Claire feels that if her precious babies live in Australia rather than Singapore, there'll be less of Mrs. Tan. After all this chatting and vibing, she invites me to visit them in Singapore, leaving me her phone number before we part ways. As I arrive home, my heart already longing for her chocolatey gifts and her ego-stroking compliments about my luggage compartment's widths, I go on the internet to find out more about her island, more specifically about this Kiasu culture she told me of. Why is the stress so stressing? Why would she rather have her kids be psychedelic rock-listening beauty gurus 8 hours away in something like a tarantula-infested desert? This fancy woman could have an answer. She wrote a book. In there, she writes about the moment when Singapore gains independence in 1965, as well as the immediate aftermath. Singapore is actually the only country in modern history to gain independence against its will. Their Prime Minister, Lee Kuan Yew, shed salty tears as he shared the tidings. Malaysia expels Singapore. At this point, the island has a big problemo. It has no natural resources, no water, no gold, naught but the grit of its folk. According to our girl Chan, this produced a specific national narrative, one that says, if we aren't the best, we are nothing. This law of the land trickling down to the soul of Mrs. Tan. Here's the context. In the 60s, many developing nations follow a trend called import substitution. Much like our boy, Rob Kardashian never left his home after he signed off from Keeping Up, once colonized nations in Africa and Asia managed to leave them toxic empires, they closed their borders, slapping high taxes on imports. The project is to be self-sufficient, to produce stuff inside for people inside. In the eyes of these countries, multinational corporations are neo-colonial thieves, here only to exploit their resources. The doors are closed. Sad Sir, Lee Kuan Yew, and Happy Sir, Econ advisor Goh Keng Swee, however, know the Singaporean island is way too teeny tiny for that produce inside, sell inside thing. They are but little Red Riding Hoods wandering through the scary forest with naught but an empty basket. With fewer than 2 million souls, most of whom possess not a single coin to their name, Singapore cannot hide in Grandma's bed. So, our iconic duo makes a gamble, opting for export-oriented industrialization. Here's the mischievous tactic. While the rest of the developing nations see multinational corporations as diabolical, greedy crooks, Singapore hands them the rose. Actually, many roses. Tax holidays, ready-to-use factories, strike-free workers. While neighbours are seizing foreign assets, the Isle of Singapore whispers a different tune. Fear not, ye masters of trade. Our workers will do, they will do with meagre wages, cruel hours, and sudden casting outs of their brothers in arms. Multinational corporations, as you know, all sharing a certain carnal world domination kink, rolled in that bitch, glasses down. HP, Texas Instruments, Rolay, marched upon the shore, their baskets full of capital. Between the years of 2000 and 2010, with the financialization of it all, assets even multiply by 11. Singapore kind of becomes the Switzerland of Asia, with much better food. During that period, Singapore also becomes the world's largest bunkering hub. A bunkering hub is basically the place where ships refuel. And since 80%, hear me, 80% of all the meaningless crap we buy, and some of the meaningful too, is at some point moved around in a cargo, the guy letting your little cargo nap for a sec, bite into a nice deli sub, is a mighty rich guy. Also, for cargoes to move, well, they need petrol. And guess what? Half of the world's petrol transits through the Strait of Singapore. So basically, what Europe went through during industrialization, in terms of, building things, inventing things, in 200 years, Singapore did in 50. Oh, who's that cutie pie, smiling gently under the sakura tree? That's South Korean sociologist Chang Kyung-sup. He wrote a very influential paper where he coined the term compressed modernity. In there, our sweetie explains how East Asian tiger economies, countries that went from rags to riches very quick, remained in what he calls a permanent state of emergency. They grind as if resources might disappear tomorrow. This paradigm is also often mobilized by the PAP, the dominant party in Singapore, to justify strict social control. Here is another book. Red is such a beautiful color, isn't it? In this book, I learned about how in the ancient days of the Chinese Empire, the imperial examination system, called Keju, was the one-shot, one-kill path to leveling up thy status. Unlike now, where becoming successful is all about meditating, manifestation, and coconut water drinking, of course. Back then, it was more about being a well-read bureaucrat. This mindset is at the roots of the kind of high-stakes testing Claire was telling me about. Her son soon too having to sit the PSLE exam, ranking the 12-year-olds from best to worst right before high school. The pleasures of life. This white guy with shiny teeth is called Thomas Talem. In 2022, he published this paper called The Rice Theory of Culture. It's an interesting one for us. In there, Shiny Teeth explains how growing rice is really quite complicated. It requires a lot of people working in sync. Compared to wheat production in the West that allowed for smaller working units, in Asia, rice culture led to highly interdependent societies with strong social control. Kiasu is rooted in this culture of having to keep up with your neighbor. So, basically, if Claire, noble spouse of a wealthy Singaporean merchant, has enough gold in her purse to visit Europe with her children, even kind of finding the old continent somewhat lagged and outpaced, it is the fruit of their policies as well as this and this. And if the rigors of the school system in Singapore weighs too heavy on her heart, it's because of this and this and this. I long to set foot upon that gilded isle myself. Thank you, Claire. Thank you for your kindness and your enthusiasm. Thank you for the chocolate. I hope I can see you again one day.